Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Vince Staley, Executive Director of Media Impact Funders. Greetings and welcome to our annual gathering of journalism funders for 2022. It's the first time we're convening this meeting in person since 2019, and it's great to see so many old friends and new colleagues here at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. I think my mic is a little high. And for anyone on the live stream or watching the recording, thanks for tuning in. Over the next 2 days, we've assembled a dense program of presentations and discussions, and we would like to acknowledge right up at the front that we may not have provided quite as much open space as we all might like, but after 3 years apart, we feel that it's very important to hear from as many voices as possible to highlight the incredible wealth of experience in the field of media and philanthropy today. And the practical implication is that you're going to be responsible for taking your own breaks when you need to. I'll leave it to our board chair, David Rousseau, who will be up here shortly to provide a brief overview of our intentions for this meeting as a whole. But in the meantime, I just want to take a moment to introduce our first musical guest of the day, Michelle Cann. And Michelle is a tremendously gifted musician and educator, and we're very fortunate to have her with us this morning. She's got a very busy performance schedule and has rehearsals later this afternoon, so it's really great to have her with us today. Michelle will play Fantasy Negre No. 1 by Florence Price, and then she will be joined on stage by Bill Johnson, General Manager of WRTI Music Radio here in Philadelphia. So in addition to the inspiration and contemplation that will flow from her performance, Michelle will also share insights that will have a direct bearing on our own work in funding journalism as we seek to support excellence and equity while also promoting diversity and inclusion. So let's all give a great welcome to Michelle Cann.
Michelle Cann. Wow. All right, I'm going to catch my breath a little bit and just say, first of all, what an honor it is to be on the stage, finally meeting you in person, and just how incredibly moved I am by your virtuosity, your passion for the music, and for championing Florence Price so beautifully. So thank you for that. Please. When I listen to you play, I'm reminded of our mission at WRTI, which is to champion music as a vital cultural resource. We go so much further than entertainment. When we champion artists like that, when we champion artists like you, it allows us to have this window into the past, but it also allows us to have this lens through which we can look at the world we live in now. And so for us, you know, we hear your music and we're moved, and we think to ourselves, it's been 2.5 years since George Floyd. We have seen a lot of movement in the world of classical music since then. People use the words racial reckoning. And you and I had a chance to talk a few weeks ago about, is it change of the moment or is it sustained change? And what will it take in order to get to sustained change in the world of classical music, which has been for so long dominated by a Eurocentric perspective on who can and who should, you know, compose this music and perform this music. So my question to you is about sustained change and how do we get there?
Oh, it's a great question. And, you know, speaking of the piece that I just played and this composer in particular, Florence Price was a perfect example of someone who deserved to be accepted in the canon of classical music, and largely wasn't, even though she was acknowledged for certain very big achievements. She was a quick little synopsis on who she was. She was born in Little Rock, Arkansas, and this was 1887 when she was born. And at that time, she actually, it was that sweet spot in history when there was growth in Black communities and in Black families. And so she was able to really, her father was a dentist, which was hard to find. I mean, for any person of color to be able to achieve that status was, you know, you can only imagine the fight then. So he was such an important figure in her life and also the community. He was a huge supporter of progress for Black Americans. So at any rate, she grew up afforded the best training that she could get down there on piano, organ, and composition as well. And that eventually led to her entering the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston, which is one of many top conservatories, or one of few really in the country. And at any rate, so she gets 2 degrees there, piano and organ, you know, studied composition. She teaches at Clark Atlanta University, runs the department actually soon after getting there. She's the head of the department for a while. And she gets married and comes back to Little Rock, and the world's changed. It's now the 1920s. I came across a picture of her. Well, somebody was showing me, I was out there doing a concert a month or 2 ago. Someone showed me a picture of his grandmother, who at the time was a teenager in the 20s. And he said, oh, we've had this picture forever in our family. And here she is, 16, whatever, his grandmother, you know, white woman, in front of this Little Rock Conservatory of Music, it was called, just a little music school there. And they were all in this picture together. And in the corner, and they'd only recently noticed that, was Florence Price. She wasn't even supposed to be in the frame, but you saw her right in the corner standing there. And it was just a testament. It floored me because I thought she went off and got this great degree, probably was had more credentials than most of the teachers in the town when she came back to Little Rock. She goes off and does all of this. She comes back because she wants to come back home. She gets married, and she's teaching at this school, and she's not allowed in the picture because segregation had taken. And so she most likely taught at the school but had to teach in separate rooms, and so she couldn't be in the picture with the other students. I mean, so you just think about, of course, the tragedy of what that does, you know, to the genius the geniuses, including her and many others that have come through, and that because, at those times we couldn't look past, which she used to talk about, look past my gender. Please forgive her exact words, forgive the handicap of my race and gender. Because she was fighting two battles by being a black and a woman trying to write music in the classical world. Like both weren't accepted. Stay in your lane, right? And so I am grateful. I mean, you'll hear later Margaret Bonds, who was actually a student of hers, and they became lifelong friends. It was another example of perseverance. I am so grateful, on that note, that they still put what they felt on the page, that they put that there for us to, even though it wasn't fully appreciated in her time. So anyway, we talked to your question about sustained change, because I'm going back in time a little bit to bring us back here and where we're going. So I'm grateful that, yes, this music exists, that we're able to go back and sort of right those wrongs and perform this music that deserves to be heard. But at the same time, we think about, even now, as you said, the 2 years later, the changes that have happened. Well, that's sadly often the way big changes happen. It takes tragedy for us to sort of re-examine what we're doing, right? And so on that, I'm grateful, it's a double-edged sword. I'm grateful that, okay, fine, change is, at least brewing. But again, we were talking about that. I worried, and many of us have worried about that, and say, okay, so this change is precipitated by tragedy. Now, is this because of a place of guilt or responsibility? Or are we going to take that farther and say, okay, this is actually what we should have had all along? Having this kind of, because if anything, it's exactly what makes, really truly what makes America so great to me, is that diversity of voices, of opinions, of ideas, right? And you think about someone like George Gershwin, a name many of you have probably heard before, well known in sort of classical and sort of jazz world. He wrote a lot of jazz sort of fusion, I guess I don't know what you want to call it, but it's, so I play a lot his Rhapsody in Blue, well known, of course, especially if you fly United Airlines now. So, but anyway, here's something really interesting. So if you know anything about Gershwin, you hear all these jazz and blues and this, that, and the other. Gershwin was friends with many black musicians. Like, we know the roots of jazz came from these black musicians, and he was learning and, sort of getting different ideas just from that, camaraderie, one would say. He actually was in the audience for Florence Price premiere. She had it was her history-making premiere of her first symphony with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I found out recently he was sitting in the audience for that through a historian in Chicago. So at any rate, he knew Florence Price and many others. So here's somebody, this white man who everybody knows his music sort of course, is like widely known from during his lifetime to now, who was learning, and a lot of what we love came from the black community. And so you think about the fact that, like, this is why all the different voices, they should be and serve to only enhance the experience in the classical world. So I guess that's my thing. I see less responsibility, even though I know that that's what's precipitated some of these moves. But I see it as, we need to see exactly what this is doing. This can't be something where you program in your orchestra, Florence Price Symphony or whoever, and you say, okay, we did our part. I see too much of that where organizations do the bare minimum to show to the public that, they're on board. One example is taking it beyond Florence Price. It's very interesting how, like, something becomes popular and then everybody jumps on it. Well, her music is great. But then the question is that what you're going to do one season? You just do Florence Price? That's our token black composer. And then, you move on back to the regular scheduled.
Well, listen, number one, if you haven't picked up on this, Michelle's very articulate and very passionate about what she does, and that is to our benefit. And frankly, you speak most beautifully, as articulate and passionate as you are, when you're behind that piano. So I'm going to ask you to set up the second piece and get on with it. So everybody, this will be Margaret Bonds, Troubled Water.